We talk often about policy that makes housing unaffordable. And I always reference, hugging a tree. Well, it's not necessarily, wipe your what with a spotted owl, but threatened bird affects one of Moorpark's largest developments in years. And I'm going to take you through this article, and this kind of highlights just the ridiculousness of, hey, you want more housing? You want more supply for housing to be affordable? Okay. Or do you want a little wild songbird to fly free, birdie free? Yeah, California is siding with the birds. And that's how housing becomes outrageously expensive. Let's get into it. Here we go. Before the developer of one of the largest residential projects in Moorpark history can start construction, Comstock Homes must first protect the habitat of a tiny bird called the Coastal California gnatcatcher. Coastal California gnatcatcher. Oh, we got to hold up development. We got to hold up affordable housing because we've got a half a dozen gnatcatchers over here that are they're flying all over and they don't realize that we need all this development. They have no idea that they're holding up housing. Yeah. You can either have environment or you can have housing. You can't necessarily have both. You can, but something's going to have to give. And guess what? A little bit of your environment's going to have to give. You're going to have species that are no longer there. That's just going to happen. That is called progress. By some, that's called backwards progress. But then they're also the ones that are complaining about housing prices being too high, and we should allow the homeless to live wherever the F they want. It's because of policies like this with don't prioritize actual development and instead go down these crazy train roads. Comstock. Let's take a look at where Comstock is, or Moorpark. This is Moorpark. Comstock is the developer. Moorpark is to the north of Thousand Oaks, right? So it's that red highlined area there. Let's go out just one more. I always like to give you an idea where we're talking about. So here's Los Angeles, and we're talking to the north and west of there. Comstock will soon begin conservation efforts for the bird on about 50 acres of land called the Hitch Ranch Habitat Preserve, which includes a portion of the residential site as well as adjacent city-owned open space to the north. So before they can do this development, they got to go in and do conservation efforts, which I'm told are going to take about 3 years. Do you know what the holding cost on a project like this would be for 3 years, let alone construction of housing? Oh, we got to get going after we get all the approvals, regulatory. There is the beloved songbird, the California coastal gnatcatcher, a small songbird. Now, I'm not saying it's not a cute bird and it doesn't deserve to, have a place to live, but to hold up an entire development over it, you kind of like, really? A songbird? Okay. Does it have, is it like an eagle? Is this an American eagle we're talking about? And I don't dislike birds. I think some of them are quite tasty. Yeah, that's just me. On June 18th, Moorpark council members granted the company permission to enter the city-owned portion of the habitat preserve and begin the conservation. You got to go in and fix this all up for the songbird before we'll give you platting for this massive development that actually adds housing units to the mix. The work will avoid existing public trails. Oh, thank God. So they've got these trails going through it. Now we got to get the habitat for the songbird, the gnatcatcher, all squared away because, we prioritize the gnatcatcher over affordable housing. Comstock did not respond to multiple interview requests because it's not going to go well for them. They're the evil-hated developer. Yeah, the one that's bringing you housing, which if you built enough of it would create, downward pressure on pricing. But we're not doing that. We're not doing it because you can't build enough. And it's because of policies like these, the tree hugging. They've got to save the gnatcatcher. Give me a break. Right? Yeah, they didn't respond to multiple interview requests, and it's unclear how habitat conversation will affect the timeline of the residential project. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb, since we're talking about trees and birds, and say it's going to take them longer to put the project together, with the gnatcatcher outstanding as, we've got to protect the gnatcatcher. The Hitch Ranch project, approved by Moorpark City Council in June of 2022, will consist of 755 homes, including 427 single-family homes, 193 multifamily, and 135 affordable apartments. There you go. There's your affordable housing. Why don't we have enough affordable housing? Because you're worried about the damn gnatcatcher. Oh. Well, is it a migratory bird, or is it you know what I mean? 275-acre property located north of Poindexter Avenue will also feature trails, public parklands, and HOA recreation areas, of which I am all for. Hey, but as far as the gnatcatcher goes, if it can't deal with a little bit of development, if you can't go a little bit further out, natural selection. Sean, you're being too harsh on nature. Well, I come from a family of developers, and, in the oil industry, you say drill, baby, drill, and if you're in real estate, it's build, baby, build. Because that's what you got to do. You got to build. You got a problem with your development, build your way out of it. You can't sit around with your thumb up your ass, just, where's the gnatcatcher today? That's a quick way of going bankrupt. So, what is the coastal California gnatcatcher? My immediate response to that is, who cares? Get those 2x4s up, start framing that bastard, let's go. Subspecies of the California gnatcatcher. The coastal California gnatcatcher is a small, non-migratory songbird found on the coastal slopes of Southern California, specifically from Ventura down to San Diego. Don't you feel warm and fuzzy now? Yeah. Again, pour the concrete, let her rip. Right? I mean, got to have some balance here. Sorry, gnatcatcher, you're gonna come second on this poll here. Its preferred habitat is a coastal sage scrub. Oh, that sounds like something you get at a Seattle yoga center. Would you like to do some yoga with your coastal sage scrub? Including sagebrush. We got sagebrush smelling stuff for you. Buckwheat and prickly peared cactus. Much of its already limited range has been developed into suburbs. That's where you build. You build in the burbs because downtown's already built out. And if you gotta, cut loose the gnatcatcher, Long Beach-based Comstock learned of the presence of the birds while preparing the mandatory environmental impact report. Residential developer at Hitch Ranch has designed and engineered this residential community so that birds and wildlife can still move safely through the development. There is little data on the subspecies population, but it's designated as a federally threatened species and a species of special concern to the state, meaning that it's likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future. Okay, but we've already identified that affordable housing is endangered, if not extinct. So which one do you want? What is the greater priority? People or the gnatcatcher, a non-migratory songbird? What's your priority? Yeah, the gnatcatcher, clearly. To proceed with construction without violating the Endangered Species Act, Comstock, the developer, had to submit a habitat conservation plan to Fish and Wildlife. These are all steps that makes housing more expensive and extends out the timeline because real estate, homes, developments are inelastic at the supply level. By the time the supply is there, demand has diminished. You know what I mean? The speed at which you can build this stuff, and we've been behind for decades in the United States building supply. That's part of the reason we have such a lack of affordable housing. You haven't built enough. And a lot of it has to do with nut jobs with this kind of priority system, which is, the gnatcatcher. The document outlined the anticipated unavoidable impacts of the development on gnatcatcher and how those impacts would be mitigated. Well, we're going to make you take this 50 acres over here. We're going to have you run a bunch of environmentalists. Meanwhile, the interest clock is ticking on your massive, massive development, and you're incurring costs while you're over there just effing around with the gnatcatcher. Yeah. Okay. On the preserve, the developer will remove invasive plants that could harm the gnatcatcher, while adding native plants, adding to specifically coastal sage scrub to provide foraging and nesting habitats for the bird. But we don't really know much about this bird other than the fact it may or may not be extinct, near extinction. Not really sure. Not a lot of federal, but gosh darn it, we got to keep the gnatcatcher going because it might be the link to cure cancer. I don't know. Necessary scrub removal will be done outside of the breeding season. We don't want it in season. Oh, can't have that. No construction buffers will be established within 500 feet of active nests, and construction lighting will be directed away from the habitats. They prioritize the bird. They prioritize the bird over people. That's what you're doing. That's what's happened. This is ridiculous. This is absurd. You can't have big supply of housing and every conceivable animal in the animal kingdom on the verge of extinction protected. It's a no-go. It's a hard no-go. And that's why Texas and Florida, Oklahoma, a lot of those states blow and go because they don't have ridiculousness like this. They just don't have this kind of crap. And even if they did, you know what their officials would say? Oh, we need the housing. Let her rip. Bring that dozer in. Let's go. Let's clear it. Once short-term improvements are complete. So this is all this, and this is what a lot of folks who aren't in development don't understand. The interest clock is ticking. That price of the interest clock, interest that developer is paying, interest on money they've borrowed to make this happen, or interest on their own equity, whatever that looks like, interest payments are stacking up. Those are going to go towards, that's going to be taken care of by the consumer and the end result price of this development. They've calculated in all those costs. So when you say greedy developer, they're just trying to make a living. So they're not the ones that are, wildly concerned about a gnatcatcher bird. Comstock and the city of Moorpark will enter into an agreement with a nonprofit that will manage the long-term conservation efforts at the preserve. We're not even talking the development. This is the preserve next door. Once the short-term things are done in the park, you got an agreement with a nonprofit that will manage the long-term conservation efforts at the preserve forever. The developer will fund site management in perpetuity. These are the steps. These are the layers that developers and builders are taking on. And this is why your housing becomes so expensive. This is part of that. The delays that just can't get enough homes up and done and built. Just ridiculous stuff like this. Well, like having to make the developer fund the site management of this wetland area or whatever it is, park area, forever, long after their profits have been taken. They've still got Junior from the university managing the gnatcatcher. Make that make sense. What animal needs a long-term conservation effort in perpetuity forever to make sure that if it can't work out a way to live, again, I go back to natural selection. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. I'm just saying. December 2024 document the company submitted to Fish and Wildlife states that grading and site improvements would take 3 years. 3 years. 3 years. While construction of the homes would take another 3 years. 6 years. And how long has this been in the process? Well, it started, talking about permits in 2022? So you're talking a 10-year project minimum minimum? Doug Spandello, Moorpark's community development director, said in an interview with Comstock, will likely begin grading in July after a biologist ensures there are no other sensitive species in the area. Oh, man. Could you imagine? I remember being down in Warrenton, Oregon, with my father-in-law, and his brother-in-law was developing 6, 7, 8 lot development. And the state made them bring in like a biologist because they thought there was Indian burial grounds. Yeah, Warrenton, it could be. And they were looking for like arrowheads and stuff. And it was some hippy dippy dude from the university out making sure that there was nothing going on. And it was like, good Lord, I hope he doesn't find anything. Because, ensures there's no other sensitive species in the area. That biologist, he is just dying to kill the development. I found the worded frog. I got one. Here we go. We gotta preserve it. I'm not saying that those animals aren't worth preserving, but it comes at such a cost, especially in the big blue liberal states, that housing is so expensive and so unaffordable that everybody points to, well, we got so many homeless here because of the unaffordable housing situation. Well, what's the timeline on your development? Well, after the gnatcatcher gets, it's 14 years of development so that we can keep a bird that we don't know a lot about that, we're not really sure what we're doing with it, but good Lord, can't allow it to go extinct. Can't it fly? Can't the bird, fly? Big building goes up, fly away from I'm just saying, you know what I mean? No, I get it. Sometimes you develop an area and take out their sensitive ecosystem, their ecostructure, but it comes down to a balance of man versus environment. And when you need to build structures, they require taking down trees, deforesting vegetation, which is what happens. I hate to say it. You got to take a grader and you got to clear that lot. Sometimes you're going to get rid of forested vegetation areas. And that's why they're building this secondary area to have as a nature preserve, right? With a biologist from the university who forever will be, oh, good Lord, where's the gnatcatcher? Is there a gnatcatcher in here today? Where's the beloved gnatcatcher? Might sound like I hate animals. I don't. I think animals are great. But there's got to be a balance. It's got to be a balance. I particularly like steak. Cows are great. They're great. This whole thing here, this is literally what I just read to you is a ongoing example of prioritizing nature over people and then wondering, God, why are rents so high? I don't get it. Because you got not only the gnatcatcher, you got all kinds of other wetland areas. I mean, you name it. They've already been planning this community forever. And if they're beginning close to doing grading in the nature preserve, then they're getting close. I mean, they have literally checked off all the boxes, dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's that they need to. Because these biologists and these tree huggers are just waiting for one small thing. No. We got to do this. Can't have the gnatcatcher facing adversity in nature where the law of jungle kind of presides. Wild stuff, right? This is literally how you get housing prices the way that they've gone, which is to the moon. Washington State does the same thing. Not as bad as California, but pretty bad. And both states are run by Democrats who prioritize anybody above the working class taxpayer, who are the ones that need affordable housing the most. But we're not doing that. Instead, nature preserve for the gnatcatcher forever. All right, that's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe, do all that stuff, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.